Coming up on the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Brian, how do you and Lean... how was it going to...
How do we shit?
No, not how
Together. Together, looking each other in the eye.
Toilets facing each other.
That SNL sketch. When you're sitting.
I might cut that into the end. Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis, a podcast for people navigating the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. Join your hosts, Billy and Brian, a couple of average dudes who will serve as your armchair life coaches as we share our life experiences, both the good and the bad, in an effort to help us all better understand how we can enjoy and make the most of the life we have left to live in a more meaningful way. Take a deep breath, embrace the present, and journey with us through the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. I'm your host, Billy, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Brian, on the bass. Brian, how you doing over there, man?
I'm fly, Billy.
Ooh, are you pretty fly for a white guy?
That's a good 90s reference, and I'm in a 90s kind of mood.
Yeah, you should be, because your band Gen X Jukebox is absolutely crushing it here lately.
We have been having fun, yes, and we plan on having more fun. Our next show is July 23rd at Excelsior Brewing. We just got done with a show with Hairball, which was super fun up at Rock and Rogers, and we just booked New Year's Eve with Fabulous Armadillos. Super fun stuff going on.
Excellent. If you want that information, you can follow Gen X Jukebox on Facebook. You can follow them on Instagram. You can go to www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com and go to contact, and you can sign up for the newsletter, and we will send you the dates for Gen X Jukebox as well, because you should get out there and check them out. I'm still in Korea, but as soon as I get back to the States next week, I will be checking out Gen X Jukebox. I will be at the Excelsior show, Excelsior Brewing, one of my favorite places to go. So if you are a listener and you want to meet me, or if you want to see Brian on the bass rock out and do his thing, come on out to Excelsior Brewing. It's a great place. We are recapping season 5. This is about take 17. We have had a lot of technical issues.
Big technical
recording
mountains.
this.
Yay!
So we are going to do a rapid fire recap here because we have spent a lot of time trying to record this episode with the always entertaining but the technically challenged Matt Hazard.
Matt Hazard.
How dare you?
Oh, it only happens when Matt Hazard is our guest. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Oh,
I
God.
love you so much, Matt Hazard. You have no idea how much I love you. And I have to keep telling myself that, because otherwise I'm going to fly to Arkansas and kill you.
Hold on. Let me explain. Never mind. There is too much. Let me sum up.
Let's get to the rapid fire here. Let's talk episodes, Billy. I got to keep you on track. I'm cracking the whip. We got about 6 minutes here to go, so do this.
Okay. Matt Hazard, let's just go right on down the line here.
Sure.
Get organized with Janet Taylor. What were your big takeaways from that episode?
So I loved her, and your conversation was great. I love talking about like the idea of not having a lot of shit in your closet, keeping yourself a little bit more minimalist. That doesn't really play in my house as much because my wife is a purger. If I haven't worn it for a year, like when you're talking about like, oh, maybe you should face it the other way in the closet and then you can turn it around. That doesn't happen in my house. She's like, you haven't worn that shirt in a year, throw it away. Like we're giving that to Goodwill.
But then how does that keep things pretty clean around your place? Do you feel clutter free?
Yeah. I mean, this office actually is a little bit cluttery because this is kind of my space in the house and I'm not as tidy as she is. I try to be tidy, but I'm not as tidy as she is. But there's just random little things around my house. Like this is my fantasy championship ring from last year. Eat it. Not from
next episode, Billy. Next episode.
But no, it's
well,
just
maybe.
it's the only place in my house that I'm allowed to keep shit.
So let's bounce here into the second episode then, which was the anti-racist conversations with Jesse Ross. What were your big takeaways from that one?
Well, the first takeaway was that I'm definitely going to attend some of these talks, and I'm uncomfortable in conversations about race with African Americans, with Black people. I've not had those conversations. Most of the conversations, which we've revisited a lot of times in our episodes, are just the three of us talking about race and our place and our privilege and trying to be active listeners and advocates and allies for people who don't look or have the same backgrounds as us. And that was my big takeaway from that, and that I'm going to attend those. No, of course I haven't, but I'll make the commitment with you. You said that you're going to come back and do some of those. I'll do them with you.
That's perfect, because being in Korea, I have not been able to attend those as much as I have wanted to. So when I get back to the States here next week, my full intention is to revisit those. And I will make sure that I send both of you an invitation to those. You can sign up for them, and then Jesse will send you a link to that.
Please do. I'd love to see what I missed, actually. I would definitely be open to having the conversation. So
they're really great conversations. And I think, kind of going back to what we talked to with Jody Farr, a lot of it just comes back to understanding other people's perspectives that we didn't grow up with or that we haven't experienced ourselves. So like I told Jesse, I don't necessarily agree with everything, but at least I have a different perspective on it. And that gives me a little bit of time to process the other side. And not even to say the other side, because that makes it sound like there's one side and then another side. There are so many dimensions and intersectionalities to consider in those kind of conversations. I'm going to jump down here to emotional intelligence, because I think being able to engage in those conversations is a big piece of emotional intelligence. So what was your takeaway from the emotional intelligence dance party with DJ Rich Bracken?
Well, first of all, really cool conversation. Rich Bracken is an entertaining guy, very high energy. What I took away from what he was talking about is the way that I interact with people in my work. I work in IT, and soft skills and people skills are not present in that industry, or they're very, very few and far between do people actually have those skills. So I really love the reaction when someone calls a help desk and they get me and they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad I got you." And that's really a thing that happens a fair amount.
What emotional intelligence skills do you think you possess that make those callers happy to have talked to you? And I don't want you to talk about what you think that other people lack. What is it that you think you possess that makes them glad to talk to you? Like, I know why I like talking to you, but why do you think these people who are in a professional setting enjoy talking to you?
I think just that I'm interested. And also, when people call the help desk, when people call for help with their computer, they're usually in a position where they feel stupid. And I do my best to make sure that people feel like it's not you, it's the machine. Even if it is them. A lot of times it is them. And they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so stupid." I'm like, no, it happens all the time. It happens to anyone. Those kinds of skills or that kind of reaction really puts people at ease. And so I'd say people, just having a good personality, being interested in them and making them not feel small.
when the machines come alive in a couple years, you're enemy number one, dude.
100%.
Blaming the machines. I wouldn't do that if I were you right now. Well, anyway, no, continue on, Billy. Go to the next episode.
So speaking from a professional perspective, then let's kind of jump down to the LinkedIn profiles with Jessica Fiesta George, because you're talking about soft skills, and those are things that recruiters are looking for. And Jessica suggests highlighting more of those along with your experience in that episode. So what is it that you took away from that episode?
Yeah, mainly that I don't touch that stuff enough. Like I don't touch my LinkedIn. I've been in my same job for 9 years and I love it. So I'm not at a position where I feel like I need to update it every day. So I don't. But it's one of those things, kind of like your resume, where you should visit it every once in a while just to make sure that it's updated, to make sure that
Looks professional.
it looks professional and attractive. It's with the
Yeah.
times. My current profile picture today on my LinkedIn profile is me emceeing Brian's wedding, which I think has got to be 14 years ago.
Yeah. 14. This will be our 15th wedding anniversary next year. Yeah.
That's how young I look today. It's the same.
So here's what I'm wondering then. Do you have built-in clients through your company?
Yes. We offer basically a high-level service that we work mostly with small medical, and they either spend their time dealing with software professionals or they spend their time dealing with hardware professionals on the phone, wasting hours of their time. And we provide a specialty service where we both provide hardware and knowledge of software. And if we don't have the knowledge, we call the software professionals for them. And so basically it's like, you make a ton of money seeing patients doing what you do. Let me take this time sucker off of your hands and you pay me a premium amount to get rid of it.
The reason why I ask that is because I wonder if you have built-in clients through your company if you don't see a need to connect and use LinkedIn as often. I know, Brian, you use it professionally. I'm using it right now to expand my network so that I can connect with people who may be able to open more opportunities because, like we've talked about here on the show, your network equals your net worth. So I'm trying to grow my network as much as possible because at some point, and one thing that I'm really trying to think about is whether or not I actually do want to go into this corporate life or if I want to escape the 9-to-5 grind, like what Brian Gallagher talks about. So what was your takeaway from that episode with Brian Gallagher?
That was really interesting to me because, like, listening to it early, I was like, this guy sounds like he made a shitload of money and then is in this kind of really privileged position to be able to find another way to make money and take his time doing it. That was my initial reaction. And then you go through the episode and he's like, all right, all that really matters, it doesn't matter how much you've made. It doesn't matter what position you're in. All that matters is that you have a really solid plan of how you're going to bridge that gap from one place to another. And if you hate the current corporate life that you're living, and he definitely did from the sounds of it, and you did too, like I mean, it's not corporate, but I feel like you've had a lot of struggles is the reason you took your sabbatical, right? So bridging that gap is just a matter of doing the math and making those connections, but it has to be what you want. And that's what I took away from that episode.
The big thing that he stressed with me when we did our one-on-one call after that episode is that you need to get clear. Like, that was his big thing. He's like, you're all over the place and you need to get clear.
Sure.
And people who have listened to a handful of episodes know that, yes, I am all over the place. This season was all over the place because we recorded it at different times and different places while I was in different states of mind. And we'll talk about that in more detail in the summer sessions. But, trying to get clear on what it was that I wanted was really, really valuable information. And I feel like that pertains to when we get to relationships, like when we talk to Christine Chang, she stresses clarity. But then our midlife marriage episode with Deanna Bryant, she talks about getting a better grasp on how you grew up. And then with Val Jones, just having a better relationship with yourself. So since those are kind of the relationship episodes, what were your big takeaways from those 3 episodes?
Yeah. So the first thing with Christine Chang, she does not fuck around like that.
Not at all.
Not at all. So I went away from that episode and I was like, I have to see who this person is. So I actually went out and visited some of those YouTube videos that you spoke about in the episode and watched her, and super cool. Highly recommend. Very direct delivery of a message. And if it's what you need in that moment, that's a great resource. So very much enjoyed that episode. The midlife marriage episode with Deanna Bryant really spoke to me. Because that's kind of the phase of my relationship that I feel like we're arriving at. Brief anecdote. I'm a people pleaser. If I value you and if I value your impact on my life, I'm going to say yes to almost everything. So there was a thing, everyone has pet peeves, but there was a thing that was happening in my house since we moved to Arkansas. We've been here 3 years, and there's 2 shelves in our shower my shelf is the bottom shelf because my bottles are shorter than her bottles, and the bottom shelf is the shorter shelf. And my soap dish is on the bottom shelf of the shower, and it is on the opposite side from the shower head. And I was noticing that when my wife would take a shower, my soap dish would be filled with water. And the soap would get soft on the bottom and it would disintegrate, and it was just really wasteful. It was just very wasteful of my soap bars. And she uses body wash, so she's not using the soap. It's this incredibly trivial thing. It's a small thing. But for 3 years, Billy, I wouldn't bring it up because I didn't want to have a confrontation about that, which is just it's a stupid thing, right? Like, it's a dumb thing. So recently, I said something about it. I actually mentioned it to her.
We like,
and
you
I was
fucking
like,
up my soap.
I was like, hey, you fucking up my soap. No, I was like, hey, no, and I did it even like this. I was like, honey, it's seriously, it's no big deal at all, but it just kind of like, it bugs me a little, like
in the most Minnesota way possible.
Oh, yeah, unbelievable. and we had the conversation. She's like, oh yeah, this is like no big deal, whatever. Like, I can just tip the shower head down a little bit more. And a week later, she was like, that was like a really big thing for you, wasn't it? and I was like, yes, man. I never would have brought that up. Like, just there's a level of comfort and conversation that we have in our relationship. I felt like it was okay to say something.
Wow.
I'm glad that you progressed to having conversations about your soap.
That's seriously, like, if I'm passionate about something, I will definitely, like, that's where we would have disagreements. But if it's something that was like unimportant and it just bothered me, I would just eat it. I just eat that and like let it sit in me. Like, just, why didn't she's short. Why doesn't she just fucking lower the thing? Like, and I wouldn't say anything.
So then how does that relate to maybe what you took away from the Selfish Woman episode?
Yeah, that's actually, you know what? Great. That's a great point. Being selfish in the way that she talked about, redefining selfish. That's what I really liked about that episode, where she was like, being selfish isn't myself before others. It's being self-centric, right? I think what were the 3 terms that you used?
So I use self-absorbed, self-centered, and selfish.
Right. And I think her version of selfish is more toward self-centered, right? You're not unaware of other people's opinion of you or what you're doing to them. You just are like, hey, it's okay to put myself first every once in a while, right?
I flip it and I say, that's your centered self.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like that. That was a good episode. I hadn't thought of things in those terms. My wife's a great communicator, and there's a lot of credit to her for our relationship being the way that it is, and we're able to communicate the way that we do. Because
except about soap.
No. Well, but Brian, the thing is, she didn't know about the soap. If there's a problem, she knows about. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, you got it.
I asked you this before our technology went to hell, and I do think this is valuable for both of you to kind of talk about, because for me, I'm not married, no kids, I can't speak to this. Kind of going back to what Deanna Bryant talks about in the Midlife Marriage, how do you guys make sure that you're on the same page when it comes to your kids? How do you make sure that you don't let the kids consume all of your time and all of your energy so that you still have something to give your partner?
Well, the short answer for the second part of that question is they do. They do. I mean, they eat, and especially during COVID, like when we've had fewer dates, but now it's almost like we're getting into I don't want to say a rut, but we're getting into a thing where it's like we're doing a lot of the same things every week, and we're not going out for dates as much. Every Friday we go out for lunch, but it's like a working lunch. Like, we go out to eat, both working from home still. So that's like kind of our weekly date where we actually get to touch base and look at each other in the face for a while. And that's the only like date thing that we've been doing that much lately. We don't get out for dinner very much, which I'd love to do more. But in terms of kids and rearing kids, like, we talk about just being teammates And I said when you asked me the first time before the technical issues, not just teammates, we're a tag team against these kids, as it were. And if one of us is getting too hot,
Whoop,
if one of
there
us
it is, brother.
whoop, there it is. Yeah.
I was thinking more Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal.
Yeah,
so.
Hawk and Animal. There you go. Yeah. No, but it's one of those things where it's like, if one of us is getting too hot, if one of us is getting right on that razor's edge, we're about to snap at one of our kids, it's the other one's responsibility to say, okay, I feel you right on the edge. Tag me in. I'm the cooler head right in the moment.
Most definitely. We do that too, man. You mentioned the big word team. Being a good team is super important.
So, Brian, how do you and Lean not let three boys consume your time? Or do they consume your time and then you just build in a connection within that? Because you guys actually do a lot of stuff together.
Well, yeah, you work with what you're given, man. I mean, that's all you can do. You obviously have to put raising children first because that's what's most important, but you make time for everything else whenever you can.
All right, so we just have a few more episodes here to discuss. So we kind of bunched together three really emotional episodes, and I did that intentionally because I had our relationship episodes bunched together, and then I wanted to transition that with the emotional intelligence one because I knew people were going to need to brace themselves for the conversations we had with Danny Bader, Carrie Schweer, and Brian Pyatt. Those were heavy episodes right there. So what were your big takeaways from those three episodes?
So the Back to Life episode is probably the most impactful episode for me on the season.
That was pretty crazy. That was a good episode.
So super heavy. And there were touch points where, like, thinking about somebody having survival guilt to the point where they think about taking their own life, it's like, holy shit. Like, just other level guilt. I can't fathom. The whole time I'm just listening, I was like, oh my God. But he's got these incredibly beautiful perspectives. A quote that I'll probably take away from that and use for the rest of my life is when he said, happiness is the perspiration of joy. What a beautiful perspective on happiness. Like, happiness isn't like a state of mind. Happiness isn't like, it's active finding joy in your life, and then other people perceive that as happiness.
Yeah, that was a sentiment that I took away from as well. And we continued on after the episode and had a conversation a little bit more about just like my own struggles with spirituality. And he said something to the effect of, rather than saying that you're not a really religious person, maybe just embrace that idea that you're exploring still. And that really resonated with me because the whole past 10 months have been, exploring myself. And it felt like it opened up the idea that it was still worthwhile seeking some sort of spirituality or some sense of connection to a higher being, whatever that might be. And whether that is just the universe or what have you. And I think what's beautiful about Danny is he gives you permission to just say, it's good enough to be connected to the universe. You don't have to be connected to God in the way that he has to be connected to it.
Sure.
And that permission, I think, is why I feel so connected to his message. And he's just a beautiful human being. And part of gaining that clarity that we talked about before on, I guess, I don't like calling this leave a spiritual journey. I don't think it's that.
Did you take any peyote?
I have not taken any peyote yet.
Not a spiritual journey. Continue on.
No ayahuasca. What I did do was take substances out of my body, and we did that interview with Carrie Schweer on February 1st, and I went to Puerto Vallarta a week after that and didn't drink. And I didn't drink February, March, April, May, and finally had something to drink here in June. But I've been doing that the last 8 years when I would do my sober school year. So this isn't any different now. And I feel like taking that time to just clear my body and clear my mind of the drink was really beneficial to me because, man, back in January and February and even March, like I was not in a good place mentally. I was really, really struggling with things. And I just think about how valuable having that sober mind is for me, specifically me. And, Brian, I know you go through that too. And I know, Matt, you're drinking whiskey right now, or bourbon right now. So,
Bourbon's whiskey.
yeah, I connected with that episode and I connected with her story and it really resonated with me. And it was an emotional one for both Brian and me. So
first of all, with regard to Danny Bader, if more Christians spoke the way that Danny speaks, Christianity would be a lot more popular. It wouldn't be losing popularity. It would be gaining popularity.
I saw something the other day that I thought was poignant. It said, if people hate you because of your belief in Jesus, that's kind of to be expected. But if people hate Jesus because of you, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's oftentimes what turns me off from organized religions.
Yeah. Yeah. The question of the drink with Carrie Schweer. So I think we spoke about it a little bit offline that I don't give a shit about Porsches. And I drive a minivan. It's the best car I've ever driven, and I have no interest. I once drove a Porsche. I think it was a 959, so not one of the sexy, not a 911 or a Carrera or anything like that. And I can drive a stick. I have zero interest in those cars. None. No, I don't like sports cars in general. So the beginning of that episode, I was like, I'm about ready to check out of this motherfucker. Like I'm like, but then she started talking about addiction, drinking, gray area drinking, which is definitely where I live. I do not drink just socially. I'm long since my binge drinking days, but I drink certainly 5 or 6 nights a week. I drink probably 1 or 2 drinks a night. It's been years since I've been sloppy drunk. So I think of myself very much in that lane of that gray area drinker. But then like I hear her say she smoked for 37 years or whatever it was. And I smoked for 7 years and I gave that up so easily. And we had a friend that went through a drinking issue where they could not drink for a month and it was related to their driving. And we decided to go sober for 40 days, I think it was. And I also had no problem with that, really. So I don't think of myself as an addict in that sense, but I guess I'm as addicted to alcohol as I am to caffeine. I'd really rather have it every day.
Do you feel like it gets in the way of anything? Do you feel like it hinders you in any way, shape, or form?
I sleep like a baby. In my home life, I don't drink when my kids are awake, generally. I don't drink during the day. After we get the kids to bed, I'll have 1 or 2 before I go to bed.
You're missing out on a lot of fun, fella. That day drinking.
Oh, the day drinking. Oh, the day drinking.
I'm just kidding.
Brian, do I miss the day drinking? No, I kind of gave up. I gave up day drinking when my kids were born, basically. Like, but I did a lot of it when they weren't.
Well, as long as you aren't self-medicating, that's a good thing. And I guess kind of transitioning, this is a different kind of medication. But when we talked to Brian Pyatt about how he uses meditation and medication, I thought it gave good pause to what Brian and I have talked about in the past about the ills of medication. And a big piece of it just comes from our own personal experiences. But then for me, working in education, feeling like too many kids are overly medicated and they go to medication before doing something like mindfulness or going to something like emotional intelligence skills, that sort of thing. Like maybe we could teach those rather than just force feed a pill. So I guess I wanted to be clear on where that comes from for me. And I thought Brian Pyatt did an excellent job of explaining how his healthy use of meditation and medication has helped him manage some of his mental health issues that he's very, very open about.
No, I don't know how much you would want me to share it, but I'm not medicated in any professional sense, although I got to go to a doctor and talk about like either make up something about anxiety or talk about my legitimate like everyday back pain and try and get one of those marijuana cards because I could just the gummies. I just want a little something. But it is medically legal in Arkansas now, so that's like something that I'll probably look into down the line. But I can tell you, my wife was medicated for some anxiety issues and things of that nature, and she went off of that medication when she left her previous relationship. Then subsequently, when we were looking at having children, because she needed to be off of it during her pregnancy. She was off of it for a number of years, and last year or a year and a half ago, she was starting to feel like she was taking things away from work, like stress away from work, and taking it out on me, taking it out on the kids, or just feeling like she had a short fuse. And she decided to go back on the medication. And she tried things like meditation. She tried things like exercise. All the stuff that you're supposed to do to try and manage those. And medication helped her. And it is helping her. So listening to that episode, I was like, yes, it is right. And it is helpful for certain people in certain situations. And I do have aversions to it as well. Like I've never been sedated. I've never been put under for surgery or anything like that. So I have some anxiety about that. And I have anxiety about drugs that I'm not managing being put into my body. But clearly it has its place. And clearly it's very valuable for some people. And with the crises that we have in this country around mental health, some medication is clearly needed in some situations.
Well said, Matt Hazard. Once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sticking around. And Brian, thank you for sticking around through our multitude of technical issues. I'm glad we finally got this thing recorded. And hopefully you enjoy this episode. Brian and I are going to be doing some summer session episodes where I talk about my travels. So if you don't care about the mental health and the emotional intelligence stuff, and you just want to hear about my travels, that's what July and August are going to be about. So tune into those. I'm going to talk about my travels to the Pacific Northwest, Puerto Vallarta, and all over Korea. I'll talk about some of the things that I've learned about myself. I'll talk about some of the wonderful people that I have met as well. If you're listening to this episode, be sure to like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. We're also on Facebook. You can look us up at Mindful Midlife Crisis Podcast. Go to our website, www.mindfulmidlifecrisis.com, and sign up for our newsletter. We send out information about Gen X Jukebox, which is Brian on the Bass's band. We also send out meditations every Sunday when I remember to write a newsletter, which I've forgotten about the last couple of weeks. But
it's okay. You're soaking up soul right now, dude. That's what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate having that permission. So with that, we are putting a conclusion to season 5. Once again, thank you, Matt Hazard, you beautiful human being. I miss your face. I love you, buddy, very much. Brian, I cannot wait to see you when I am back in Minnesota here coming up pretty soon.
We're going to have some fun.
We are going to have some fun. I am very much looking forward to seeing Gen X Jukebox in person. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, giving you a hug. Looking forward to seeing all my friends back in Minnesota soon. So for Matt, for Brian, this is Billy. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved. Take care, friends. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Mindful Midlife Crisis podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with your family and friends. We will do our best to put out new content every Wednesday to get you over the midweek hump. If you want episodes to be downloaded automatically to your phone each week, all you need to do is hit the checkmark, subscribe, like, or follow button, depending on what podcast format you're using. While you're at it, feel free to leave our show a quick 5-star review with a few kind words so more people like you can easily find our show. If you're really enjoying the show and you want to help us out, feel free to make a donation to www.buymeacoffee.com/MMC podcast. That's www.buymeacoffee.com/MMC podcast. You can also access the link in our show notes. We use the money from these donations to pay whatever expenses we incur from producing the show, but ultimately, we record this show for you. So if you keep listening, we'll keep recording and releasing new episodes each week regardless. If you'd like to contact us, or if you have suggestions about what you'd like us to discuss on future episodes, feel free to email us at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to the articles and resources we reference throughout the show. Thanks again for listening. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved.